Older people of Reddit, what was the equivalent of teaching your grandparents to use the internet when you were growing up? Here's a really old one. My dad, who would be 102 if he was still alive, grew up on a farm. When his dad got their first tractor, he couldn't figure out the manual shifter, so he would make my dad sit on his knee and shift gears for him while he drove. Family legend has it that my farmer granddad, still with us, in his 90s now, tried to stop his first tractor by shouting "whoa" at it, like he would with his draft horse. The tractor, obviously, ignored him entirely, and granddad and the machine ended up in the canal. Reportedly that was a common problem for pretty much everyone when automobile manufacturers would do test drives as a publicity thing. My father, born 1922, told me his grandfather refused to believe in radios. He figured someone was pulling his leg. My grandma was born in 1925. She once told me that her 4th grade teacher told the class that in the future you'd be able to talk to a person across long distances while seeing them at the same time. My grandma vividly remembers thinking that it was the dumbest thing she'd ever heard. We speak through FaceTime regularly now. Debit cards. Like, how to actually pay by card and withdraw at an ATM. Lol. When my mother passed away in June 2018, I realized my dad had no idea how to use his debit cards because my mother handled everything like that. We had to go to an ATM to actually practice taking cash out, and then go into a shop to practice using the card to pay for things. He was totally blown away, and after using contactless to pay for some newspapers exclaimed, "My God. It's so easy," the shopkeeper could barely conceal her laugh. My lovely grandma used her microwave for one thing only, heating water. It was adorable. She also only used email once. Her message to me: "Your dad made me do this. I'll never be the same again. Love, Grandma." My grandmother, born 1888, never learned to drive and always referred to my grandfather's car as the machine. The microwave. There was a while there old people thought it was a high-tech magic box that if you pressed the wrong buttons could alter space-time forever and blow up the universe. I have a friend whose parents are in their early 60s and they refuse to get a microwave because they think it will give them cancer because radiation. When my husband and I lived with his parents for a while, I had to use my microwave in the bedroom because my mother-in-law was terrified of having it in the kitchen. My dad tried to turn my CDs over like records in the early 90s. One of my uncles used to rewind both sides of music cassettes after listening to them. Edit. Thank you for the silver. You always rewind the B-side first. Why is that? So then it gets completely rewound. If you rewind a shore first, it causes the tape player to act funny. When my great-grandmother first had electricity installed in her house, she was given an electric clothes iron. After ironing, she would insist on leaving it plugged in and placed on a high shelf so the leftover electricity would drain back out. Apparently it took a long time to convince her that electricity did not work like water. This reminded me that my grandma, who was in her 90s and had email, thought that the email was delivered to her inbox by people. My mom would tell her she sent her something and my grandma would say, "Well, they probably haven't delivered it yet," when most likely it was in spam. So cute. I miss her. She's also the one that told me in her 80s that she still feels the same as she did when she was 18. She meant in her head, not physically. She's right, you do feel the same. A record player. They have 3 speeds. 33 revolutions per minute for LPs, 45 revolutions per minute for singles, and 78 revolutions per minute for the old-timey records. My grandparents had theirs set to 33. I was messing around with it and left it at 45. They called my parents ranting that I broken it. I told them how to fix by just moving the control that highly visible at the front. The next time I visited, they accused me again of breaking it. I had to change the setting and was told never to touch it again. The irony was completely lost on them. My great-grandmother was born in 1900. She was in her late 90s when this happened. One day while visiting her in the nursing home, my mom asked me to call home to remind my dad to put dinner in the oven. My great-grandmother saw me use my brick of a cell phone and wanted to know what it was. I explained and her face just lit up. So you could be grocery shopping and call home to ask your husband what he wants for dinner? She asked. She thought this was just fantastic. Then she asked if she could try. She called my great aunt, her daughter, on my cell and regaled her about the marvels of modern technology. It was so cute. Great grandma was a month away from her 102nd birthday when she died. She lived long enough to cuddle my son, her first great grandchild. She was a cool lady. I miss her. My grandma is 86 and although she had a cell phone since the early 2000s, she never really used it and always used the landline. Last year, her old cell phone died and we got her an iPhone thinking that it'll likely stay the drawer. Imagine our surprise when we started receiving group iMessages from her with photos of her garden. She figured out how to do that all on her own. Even the speech to text function. She has Parkinson's and it really helps. So I showed her FaceTime and she was over the moon. Now it's video calls all the time. I never thought she would get to grips with that thing, but sure as hell am I glad she did. Child-proof caps on medication in the early 70s. None of the adults could figure that out, so they'd hand their bottles of meds to the kids for us to open. Everyone thought it was funny as hell. My grandparents received an email from a Nigerian prince and they had heard this was a scam. They called me terrified that they had been hacked and that he'd stolen their money. I asked them if they downloaded anything, responded to him at all, or sent him anything. They said no. I explained that they were fine and to just delete the email. They printed it out and went to every bank they did business with to make sure he hadn't taken their money. I feel so bad for all those bankers. What an awkward conversation. Mr. Banker, I want to make sure Prince Wazoo has not taken any money from my account. A little off topic, my high school got computers my senior year. Admin hunted for a teacher who had a free period so they could teach computer class. One of my favorite school memories is the football coach standing at the front of the room offering extra credit to whoever could figure out how to turn the computer on. One of us left a Game Boy at my grandma's house and she started playing on it. She loved it. We all chipped in and got her one and eventually she would hide it when the kids came over so no one would mess with her score. Miss you, Nanny. This was my mom in the 80s. She discovered Tetris and my brother and I never got to play again. Somewhat pertaining to the thread, I asked my grandpa, born 1930s, what the devil technology was when he was growing up. He said his parents refused to have a television in the house because it'll ruin them. He and his friends had to run off to the barber shop anytime they wanted to watch TV. Also, automatic windows in cars are evil. According to his dad, if you're too lazy to roll up a window, you're too lazy to drive a car. Microwaves. My dad bought my grandparents a microwave. First day grandpa puts a metal pot in it with tin foil on top and it fried it. Day 2 microwave 2. Grandma puts her socks in to warm them up. Socks got burned because she set it for 10 minutes. Day 3 microwave 2. We gave them a lecture of how to use microwaves and how they work. Grandma puts a sealed Tupperware in and it melts then explodes. Coating the inside with plastic and food. Total loss. Day 4 microwave 3. They say thank you and we appreciate it but it is too complicated for us. We kept the mic for ourselves and got them a new TV instead. They still got up to change the channel. The remote was too complicated for them. We were teaching my grandma, born in 1920, how to play Nintendo in about 1990. She kept letting Mario walk off the edge and we were cracking up. My other grandma asked me one day if I was allowed to wear jeans at college. She was born in 1928. My mother-in-law, born in 1925, was watching my husband on his MacBook and she said, "It's an apple with a bite out of it." My dad, who was born in 1950, never needed help with any of it. He was using computers before I was and transitioned to iPhones and iPads seamlessly. This notion that boomers don't know how to use technology is actually pretty silly. We, my brother and 3 cousins, all boys, taught my grandma how to skateboard down her driveway. Circa 1979. This isn't quite on topic but it's funny. It was one Thanksgiving in the 80s and my grandmother had just gotten out of the hospital from having one of her kidneys removed and wasn't able to be up walking around yet. Now they always had Thanksgiving dinner at their place for the whole family and my grandmother always did all the cooking. This year my granddad insisted that he would take care of it. Grandma told him to make sure he cleaned the turkey and sanitized everything, so what he did was he sprayed the whole turkey with Lysol inside and out and put it in the oven. Suffice to say they did not have a home-cooked turkey that Thanksgiving. I had an old relative who had lived in a small village without electricity for most of her life. She adapted pretty well to changes in the 80s and 90s, but in 2000, she was probably 85 and half blind. I had this stuffed monkey that would make monkey noises if you pressed its nose. She was visiting, saw my baby sister playing with that and she jumped in, grabbed the monkey and yeeted it out because she thought it was a real animal that could be dangerous. I attribute this more to the fact that a monkey slipping into your house and playing with your baby wasn't a strange occurrence in the milieu she lived in. Thanks for watching. Please consider liking the video and subscribe if you want more Ask Reddit.